Welcome to Unmasking, a podcast for those ready to lead, love, and live with more clarity, freedom, and truth. We all wear masks, and they have helped us all to fit in, stay safe, get ahead. But over time, those same masks start to weigh us down. They disconnect us from our joy, our energy, and our true self. This show is an invitation to explore 15 of those masks that we wear to be accepted, admired, or in control. And then to get really curious about what they're really costing us. I'm your host, Barbour, and in each episode, we'll look at one mask and explore what it protects, what it hides, and what's possible without it. I invite you to join me in unmasking. We'll laugh, we'll probably cringe, but we'll be real. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Unmasking. We are here with my dear friend Katie, who we are going to discuss the rebel mask today. And before we dive in, because I'm so excited, because my people pleaser, first child rule follower, turned 57, is dying to know more about the rebel mask and how it serves you, and somehow how it gets in the way. But for the listeners today, we can learn all about Katie. She's going to give us a bio at the end of the show notes. But most importantly, Katie has just a lovely energy, and so I want to know from you, Katie, what is your deepest hope when people walk away from a real live interaction with you, how they feel?
I think I would want them to feel like, I think everyone has a bit of a rebel inside of them, and they're a little bit afraid or fearful that that part of them's not lovable. And so when others walk away from me, I want them to feel like that part is especially loved.
Lovely. I think you do a great job of that, by the way, personally. I'm inspired by your rebel, just so you know. Okay, great. Well, it's always fun to know have you always felt the rebel as a part of your persona? How did it show up in your family? Like, when did it start? When did it show up in life?
Yeah, so I have always felt like there was something about me, even since I was a child, that maybe should be hidden. That when I was taught what to do or what not to do, either by parents or other adults or religious leaders, my takeaway from it was like there's something natural in humanity and in me specifically that's wrong, that should be fixed and hidden, or so I think, like, ever since I was a child, there was like this questioning of like, am I allowed to trust these thoughts and feelings that feel like maybe in some ways opposite of what I'm being told is okay, or is it something to get rid of and something to pay attention to as dangerous? So yeah, I've always had like some part of me that's like, is everyone around me feeling the same way? Am I the only one that doesn't think or feel what I'm told I should? Yeah.
Right, and it's hard to know with everybody wearing their masks, to know who's people pleasing, who's feeling what, because we all, especially when we were young, wanted our to be fit in, to make our parents happy. We wanted to do it right.
Yep.
When was the first time that your rebel was like, I have a story that it's like, I don't play by those rules?
Yes. Let me think about that, because honestly, there's a large part of my life, it feels, that I didn't trust my rebel, even though it wouldn't stay quiet. I still wasn't really letting that part of me lead the way. I was silencing it in order to belong in the places and spaces that I really wanted to. So,
Well, let me
yeah,
reframe then, because I
yeah.
feel like that's not the right place to start. Just kind of tracking you. How did that feel to hold that down? Or I think I've heard before, maybe even Jim Detmer say, like, hold the beach balls down. A part of you that you didn't want to be seen. Like, so how was it like that for you? I'm thinking of like growing up.
Yes, it was tiring. And yeah, it just felt like I was masking in pretty small ways, I think, for most of the time, in order to just stay safe and belong in the places that I wanted to. I think a great outlet for me was imagination, because if whatever rebellious sort of experiencing I'm wanting to have is one step removed, so either through books or through movies or music, if someone else is doing or saying what I want to do or say, at least I'm having some of that experience. So a lot of the arts were ways for me to sort of feel at home in, or at least feel like I was not alone in sort of the ways that my rebel was coming up. And in adulthood, stand-up comedy was a big place for me to feel the release valve on some of those feelings. Yeah.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And that's so awesome, because that's such a, I mean, what great tools to be able to not feel alone, especially in the digital world that we're in. You think about everyone talking about being alone and
Right.
feeling alone, and that, yeah, right, it's in the stories and it's in the songs and it's in the, and it's not always the connections that we think it's going to be sometimes. I mean, it's like little distant human connection, or, I know we talk about nature and stuff like that, but that's really, really, and so she served you a lot of ways when you're younger, and in terms of you got to be felt and seen. Well, I mean, she didn't serve you, but she was you were aware of her.
Yeah. Yes. And I would say one of the first times that it came, like, that I noticed that that voice had something of value was being raised in a really religious family and culture in general. And
Right.
as I was a teenager and having deep conversations with friends who did not practice the same religion, and ex- they would describe to me what it would feel like for them to be in this friend group where everybody seems to think and feel the same thing about religion and spirituality, and they did not. And I got the feedback a few times that I was able to have conversation that felt a little more open and nuanced as to sort of what the experience of others could be in that situation, even though I was a part of the group that they felt like it was hard to relate to, or that they felt like it was hard to be seen by.
So that's an interesting piece of you, because my experience as a people pleaser were the rebels were scary, right? They threatened my safety, like, and yet we're all looking for safety in different ways, right? And so that's fascinating. What do you think that it was that you brought and can bring as a rebel, and also bring that safety feeling to someone, to not feeling judged, or just the ability for them to be fully seen even though you are different? Because I think that's super alive these days.
I think openness and curiosity about the experience of others, not being threatened by people who think or feel differently, meeting that with excitement and curiosity is super powerful. And then I think, sort of ironically, that made me maybe a little bit more threatening to the group I belonged to, because maybe I wasn't adhering as strictly to sort of non-negotiable beliefs, because I had more curiosity about the experiences of other people. Yeah.
That has to be hard, right? Because the people you love are in the people in that container, where it has some strict rules or and expectations, and yet it's so natural to be curious, and it's so for some of us, I think it's just so natural to want to know more, to grow and to do all that stuff. So that's interesting. Is there anything more to say on that? Like, I'm just curious. Like, am I missing something on that?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think that the part of me that could feel unseen by the group that I belonged to really wanted to see others and listen to the ways in which they felt like they didn't belong.
Yeah, and so do you think that how we're all listening for different things, and so we're trying to see it in someone else, and we're trying to do a good version of it, in order to. And I know that I do the same thing. Like I want to understand you. I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel comfortable, and that. But it's when I'm at my best, right? When I'm at ease, I can be super open and comfortable. But if I'm tired, if I'm run down, any type of things that stir irritability, which apparently happens pretty easy if you ask my family, you know,
Yeah.
and then I can be easily at threat
Yeah.
in the same
Oh my
moment.
gosh. Yes. Or if like I have the slightest hint that you're not reciprocating the openness, then mine can go away in a second.
Yeah. And do you think that we just have all of that protector in us, and that it just shows differently, like that oh, you're not doing it the way, like at the level I'm doing it, or with reciprocity at a level that I feel is maybe worth the investment. I don't even know. Like that's all the things that I come up with when I'm having an experience of someone, is like,
Mhm.
gosh, there's a lot of output and there's not a lot of coming back. But do you think that when you're, I find you fascinating and complex, because the curiosity and open and the rebel. So what are the current containers of rebel that you enjoy, and how have you practiced bringing that natural part of you that you suppressed for a while growing up?
Hmm. Um, I don't know if container feels like the right word for me.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think that, I mean, and maybe it doesn't even sound that rebellious, but for me, it's just allowing my truth to be spoken and heard, even in situations that feel a little bit scary. It took me a lot of growing into adulthood to trust my voice and yeah, and not feel like I could do damage by just saying what felt true for me.
Mm.
And so that can feel, as simple as that sounds, it can feel very rebellious and brave in certain situations. Like, especially in the relationships I care most about, when something I think or feel seems at odds with what they think and feel, that can feel risky.
Oh yeah. It's actually constant risk for that, right?
Yeah.
How does that show up? I know we share a love of household of men. Katie
Hmm.
actually has one more than me. She has four boys.
I,
And I had, wait, five. Am I
yeah.
miscounting? Are we counting
Yes.
your husband, or you have six with the husband?
6 with a husband.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're up. Yeah. Okay.
Got a house full.
You have a house full. Do
Hmm.
you have any rebels in the family?
I wonder. It's interesting to see how my kids are as adults, because yeah, I definitely had rebels when they were kids. And because my husband Danny and I work really hard at just allowing our children to show us who they really are, it's hard to like even have a rebel in that kind of a container.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, yeah, they are rebellious in small ways, just in ways that they don't maybe conform to the culture that they grew up in, but no rebels within the family because there's room for almost anything here.
That's beautiful. What about, let's go backwards in time, because I have this idea of my little girl Anne, junior high Anne and Katie, being like, I'd be like, you know, what was your experience in junior high of other girls?
Oh man.
It can be boys too, because I like playing with the boys, the sports.
I I have always deeply loved friendship and sisterhood. And when you pinpoint junior high, I'm like, I was a disaster because I'm riddled with insecurity and trying to like control my friends and feel safety as their best friend. It's not good enough to be one of the friends. I want to be the favorite friend. And I still do have that, but I understand that part of me a little bit better. I'm not going to like give you a rug burn just to like really drive the point home. I just, yeah, as a junior high girl, I was really sort of learning boundaries around how much influence and control I could have over others. I was working at it, man. Yeah.
Did you have did you find that in that environment you were able to, like, did you have a lot of influence?
No.
Wait, okay, let me ask a better question. Maybe, would other people think that you had a lot of influence?
No.
No?
No, and I had plenty of friends. I just didn't, I wanted to be everybody's only friend, Like when other people did stuff without me, I was like so at the effect of being left out and, toying with like giving somebody the silent treatment and then the pain of them not even knowing, you know?
I do.
So,
I
yeah.
do. All right. Now, I know we're jumping, but it's kind of shifting for me as we experience it, and I'm listening to you
Yeah.
because now I'm like, all right. So it's really this inner rebel of becoming fully known, seen, trusted, not knowing if anyone's going to have any of those experiences of you, and learning to, more than dip your toe in, but show up in those spaces that way. How has that, as an adult, like fast forward now, like how has that served you, and what do you get from being able to be a healthy challenger with people who just love comfort and keeping that open, curious, like, because you really are having to hold, I have an idea that is like holding a gap of this space of discomfort and also wanting for desire for connection. And can you talk to that at all, like, because people, as we experience, fall to victim really fast when challenged. And so, yeah, I'd like to hear more what you had to say about that, or what your
Can you
thoughts
say
are.
it like, I feel like there was too many words
Too
for me to
many
understand what
words.
you were asking.
I often do
Yeah.
that. Too many words.
No,
In
it's
one
not
way,
reputation. It's just like me.
yes,
Yeah. Anyway.
we'll play the good old one out breath.
Yeah.
In one out breath, I would love to know how your rebel navigates your relationships these days with more authenticity and truth, and what, as a result, how do your relationships feel?
Yeah, I would say that being this age, um, I enjoy the luxury of maybe finally believing the people that love me when they say they love me. That feels like it's taken a long time for me to relax into believing that, and that the I love you isn't full of a bunch of unspoken conditions. And so then that allows, like, my rebel honestly can feel like the sort of shadow part of that comes out when I'm afraid that how I think and feel is somehow not okay. It's somehow going to create separation or division from the people that I want to be connected to. So, a lot of my life, the rebellious part of me was the shadow part. And now reaching sort of a more mature age, it's that still can come up, but I'm also feel so loved and supported by the people in my life that the rebel has some space to relax also. Yeah. So there's and for me that so there's a piece there with like maybe being able to hold space for people with different viewpoints, um, and not feel threatened by that. But yeah, there's so many ways to use the word rebel that sometimes I'm not quite sure which one we're pinpointing, you know?
Well, I think that's what we're dancing with actually in this moment. I
Yeah.
think we've hit on a couple of them because I think I had a story on what kind of rebel you were and just not, I mean, not knowing you, but not knowing you at all the levels.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to adjust to like not having like those stories and kind of just honoring what your version of rebel is, because I think that we hear words so easily, and I come up with my story. I mean, it's just kind of whole fact, story, belief system, and the joke's on me as always, but I find it funny and fun to play with as well. So anytime you want to redirect our rebel discussion, you just feel free to jump in and do that. I welcome that. I was thinking about some of the superpowers that your rebel brings is like specifically in group dynamics. How do you what is not only being seen and valued, but so many people play the good person role and they never speak their full truth, right? So then we end up having a lot of niceties, but we end up stuck in energetic patterns. And so I'd love to hear your experience from your side on that.
Thank you. Yeah, doing group work has been so beneficial for me when it comes to um, playing with different ways of showing up, because what I've seen in so many situations is that I'm having an experience in the group and it's pulling me out of presence or I'm allowing myself to be pulled out of presence because there's been some sort of resistance or aversion to something that's going on. And so my mind is kind of working on that in the background, and I'm not focusing on what's actually happening in real time, and so I'm so grateful for the group work that I've been able to do because it has encouraged just like blurt what's coming up for you. If it's pulling you out of presence, let's hear what's going on. And as I've played around with doing that, I've gotten the feedback over and over again, like that somebody else in the group was having the same experience and they just didn't want to say it, and so they were grateful that I did. And it's not necessarily that I need that every single time, but hearing it on a number of occasions has made me feel more emboldened to be willing to do that.
And how do you know when it's in service and when it's
I don't. I
my controller would like to know how you know how to do it so well, because I find it it's refreshing. It jolts the group, into, oh, I was drifting because I was trying to me, like, be a good person, be a good team member, good, blah, blah, blah. And yet, in those moments I find that I'm not fully alive either. I'm drifting, and so yeah, so anything else on what you want to say about group that are encouraging tools to use? Because I think of you as pretty clean at saying some no's. Do you feel that way? Because I gotta check my stories now with my whole rebel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I've gotten that feedback, and it's not something I knew was a skill or even recognized as unique to myself. And it's funny because now that I'm thinking about it, I remember in my earlier adulthood listening to Oprah talk to somebody about being asked something on the spur of the moment and kind of providing this person with some tools to, like, we just are so, the people pleaser in all of us just wants to say yes, of course I want to help you, especially when somebody's asking for help. And she gave this woman the tool, like, I'm going to pray on it first, I'm going to take it to Jesus. And I just remember that, learning that in adulthood. I didn't use those same words, but sort of allowing for the pause, kind of respecting your own your own energy and what you really want to give. And that to me was a great lesson, because I really did take that to heart. And in this stage of my life, a lot of times the ask was, will you watch my child? Because there was a lot of trading childcare. And I remember sitting with that and thinking, like, I would never want someone to watch my child that doesn't want to be with my child. And from that place, I felt like even though there was some discomfort in saying no, I also felt like it was the most in service for me and for the person who was asking it of me.
Wow. Yeah. My pleaser wishes she was better. She, you know what I mean? Like, how many times I said yes and meant no, and I was out of integrity with myself, and I didn't want to be in situations. I mean, whether it's, certainly taking care of someone else's child, you really, like, they're honoring you with a beautiful responsibility, and you're just doing it because you should. I mean, it's that whole should thing, and yeah. So that is. And do you feel like you have, like, when someone's in need and they ask you something and you say no, do you find that they move on pretty quickly? Like our big fear is that it's gonna be something bigger than my big fear. I should make up, tell you what, like, my fear is that if I say no to people, like, I could lose them. Like, it feels like that. And, any suggestions for someone who needs to practice saying no more and wants to, but doesn't know how?
I would say practice, as in almost anything, practice in small ways, before maybe cutting off what feels like a big ask. Although big asks are very easy for me to say no to. It really just depends on the relationship. And is the ask, I know that maybe this sort of like weighing and balancing this kind of a thing, but it does factor into it for me. Like, is this the kind of relationship where this ask feels appropriate? And for me, honestly, I love to be wanted and needed, and it is the highest compliment in most situations for me to be called upon by somebody who is in distress. I love to be the superhero that's coming to the rescue in a big way, in big grand gestures. Like, I will show up and I will take care of your children, and I will make them dinner, and I will take somebody to the hospital. I will stay at the hospital with you all night long. I love, like, emergency energy. I'm like, ooh, yeah, interesting. I'm in. But it's like in the smaller day-to-day asks where it's like, can you pick my kid up from school every Thursday and keep them for 2 hours? You're just like, ugh, no. So it's like I'm definitely owning the part of me that, like, loves to come to the rescue and gets energized by an emergency, and then feels drained by, like, what feels like an unnecessary ask or something like that. But back to your question about, like, how do you learn how to say no and protect your boundaries? I think just pausing. I think pausing, even though it can be uncomfortable for the asker and the responder, I think in our culture we're just so used to getting a fast response that a pause can feel like you regret asking. I think it's valuable to pause.
Yeah.
Really valuable.
I have a wise one a friend who said, your pace is sacred. And, like, my nervous system, I'm a Taurus. I love to go slow, right? I like to take my time. I like to season in things. And I have a lot of people around me. A lot of my boys like to go fast. They like to be busy. They like to go at their pace. And I find that the better, and then what would happen is I would say yes, and then I was like the volcano mom where I had suppressed and then, totally lost it. And you're right. But the awkward silence from the pause is really fun to play with, because you notice your own self. I mean, I noticed, like, what are they thinking? Are they feeling bad? And, and I immediately go outward naturally. And I have to, like, remember to come back. So then it even takes longer because I have to go through that multi-step process of returning to self before I can really, like, get in tune. And, I don't know about you, but once I get up and running, my doer, like, she just runs on autopilot. She doesn't even realize she's saying yes to things she means to say no to. And,
Totally.
I think
And I
that
think
that's
along those
hard.
lines too, something that's interesting to consider is that a lot of the kind of asks that we are saying yes to are coming from in here, So I find it much easier to check in and say yes or no when someone else is asking the question, and I'm shooting myself all over the place in very unconscious ways in my family and showing up to serve and provide in ways that I think are needed and maybe even expected. And that is the place that I allow myself to get run ragged, is by not checking in with myself and the ways that I'm showing up that aren't actually being asked of me, but I do wear myself out in that situation for sure.
Yeah, and I think, well, I don't know about you, but and for the boys, like, at the age that they are, like, I'm kind of having fun. Like, it's not that I'm not getting rid of any of the roles that I've played, right? I have no interest in getting rid of them, but there are jobs within those roles that I no longer wish to be responsible for, and so it's been really funny to witness their response to me being like, so we're going to do it differently this year. Dinner is a, conquer divide, and, grocery store included, dishes included. Like, it's not just, do your grilling part and sit on the couch and watch me do the rest of it. And so it's just, so so the shifting, and as we are always in constant change and evolving status, how do you have any future vision of, I mean, I rarely do the future self because I'm not very good at it, but do you think about, like, where you'd like to be with who you are, as, like, what do you want to do with now that you're rebels online, right? You're inner rebel, and your boundary setter, and your things, and obviously, we're always doing something to, like, work with it. It's not complete, but what would be fun for you? What would be fun for you? Is there anything that you're like, I'd like to try that next? Or stand-up comedy? I mean, I'm literally like, I'll throw it all out there. Like, put
Mm.
yourself in a position where, you get to play full out, something like that. Have you considered anything like that?
I have, I am in a stage of life where I am open to growing into whatever is next. And I still feel like I'm very much in the stage of being open and seeing kind of what crosses my path or my field of vision to see what I kind of want to follow or grab onto. Because, yeah, having just relocated, less than a year ago, and it feels like there's been a lot of endings and beginnings. And I do feel like I'm in a stage where I want to welcome something new. And that feels exciting. And I don't have a whole lot of guidance in this moment as to what that's going to be or look like.
Right, which can be a blessing and a curse all at once.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like open and interesting. And then it's also like, but how about just a few, like, a few guideposts to be
A
like,
few winks.
point your wagon in that direction? Because being
I mean,
open
I'm
is
only asking
great.
for one step in that direction. You're not.
Yeah, exactly. Like, are you willing to take the first step? When you said stand-up comedy, it's like I have thought about that a few different times, and it is like so terrifying to even imagine it. Just terrifying. So, and this is the part of like myself that I can really criticize, and is the one that like loves to consume and it can be afraid to create
Mm.
in lots of different places. Yeah.
Does the rebel get seen in the consumption, or is it a place where it may? I mean, this is probably a stretch, but does it get hidden when you're like, less? I know less now, but in that kind of consumption mode, because I have that want to keep
Mhm.
learning and growing, but then at some
Mhm.
points I wonder, am I committed to that or am I actually hiding? And it's such a thin veil for me between sometimes I'm just tired and sometimes I'm just tired and I want to hide.
Question. You know, when I was taking the assessment and like answering the different prompts, I think what led my, and it's, I don't know exactly because I didn't create the
Yeah.
model, but I think what led my answer to be rebel is like a strong resistance to authority and a willingness to disappoint other people maybe and to do what I want versus what is expected of me. And so it's not that I don't feel like I have a great rebellious streak where it's just like an aggressive, larger than life persona that takes up all the space in the room. It's just, for me, it feels like this, like you've pointed to, this inner, like, I will receive a lot from others and then sit with it and especially though from a position of authority or a strong persona that's like, this is the way that it is and this is what you need to do. No. I've lived a lot of my life that way, and I have a hard no to that.
Seems like a strong red flag for you, like certainty.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, yes. I don't trust anyone who's certain. No.
Me neither.
Get away.
And it's really funny because, were either one of your parents like certain? Like, did they appear like they knew the answers to everything?
Yes, until their children started exhibiting,
Exposing them?
not necessarily exposing them, but just like they were certain about the way things are and things would be until their kids grew up and started deviating from that. And then it was actually quite beautiful to watch how much bigger the container became because their kids couldn't possibly be outside of it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to think of it.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing to watch, and there's so much gratitude for my brothers who seemed to be the ones that were willing to actually overtly say, like, actually, no, this part of what you've taught me isn't for me. I had those thoughts and feelings, but was so afraid to lose the love or respect of my parents that I didn't reveal that part of myself initially. So watching somebody in my family do that and to see how love is bigger than all of it was really,
Oh, that's so interesting. So wait,
yeah.
remind me, you're one of how many?
I'm the third of 8 children.
You're the third of 8.
Yeah.
Okay. And then which siblings were good at, like, around you? Not all of them said no, obviously.
Yeah.
But were they the closest to you? Or what were the
No.
relationships?
No, so it was my brother who's 10 years younger than me, who kind of, in my mind, paved the way for there to be some dissension. And he didn't do that until he was probably, oh, maybe 28. And, so at that point, I'm 38.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating, again, because birth order, like first child, like I'm coloring inside the lines from day one. And I'm so disturbed when people don't, on the inside. I didn't always express it, but it was definitely there.
Yep.
And then noticing my middle brother, he's fascinating. He would just nod at my parents and do whatever he wants. So he wasn't really a disruptor. He was just a whatever he
Yeah.
wants. And I was always
I was
envious.
always like, I didn't know that was an option.
I didn't know that was an option either, and that really pissed me off.
I know. You're like, why am I the sucker asking for permission?
Why am I the sucker asking for permission? Yeah, and so that is so funny. And then our boys, they were typical, not typical, but when our middle son, started breaking some rules, the rules I had worked hard to never break, I was, well, let's just say, I was too over-identified with like what he was doing because I was like, wait, you're not following the rules. Like it just messed everything up. And I just think to what you just described as that beautiful family expanding container. And I think we've eventually gotten there too. So that makes me like we've expanded. We're the allowing of mistakes and the allowing of messiness and knowing that's actually where life actually is in deep
Yeah.
supportive, beautiful relationships. But thank you for that visual, because I have this visual as a visual of this beautiful big family, and then
Yeah.
the container just expanding through love and support.
Yeah, absolutely. And you saying that about your boys also reminded me of this beautiful stage of parenthood for me where my oldest children started choosing paths that were clearly outside of the culture that they were raised in. Um, so I was raised in the Mormon church and raised my children that way as well. And my oldest son went on a mission and came home, and at a year or so into college, he started sort of living and experiencing life in ways that were outside of the recommendations, like whether it's like alcohol use or, using marijuana occasionally recreationally with friends, and watching my boys feel sort of the liberty to experiment with life. And, that was scary for sure.
Yeah.
But then it also showed me like, no one's in charge of you but you. And you've been living a lot of your life as if somebody else is the boss. Yeah. So watching it also, I felt like so grateful for my children for showing me that there's a lot of ways to do this. And sure, you could do it this way, and that's okay. And you could also do it like this, and that's okay too. And
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, you guys are so interesting and brave. I think maybe I could be too.
Yeah. I think some of the boys, yeah, have been my greatest. I mean, 100% they've been my greatest teachers. And I don't mean it like they should have been in charge when they were young and stuff, but that transitional young 20s age where they're really coming into their own. And for me to take the leap of faith to trust that they have a path that is not one for me to predict, and not one for my husband to predict, and
Right.
and to allow the freedom of that has helped widen our container. But we still fall back occasionally. There are things that scare us still,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
and yet it doesn't. That pattern, it seems to be an old pattern where I'm like, it could be scary and still like, okay, we still,
Yeah, exactly.
we just love you. My job is to love you. Period.
Right.
In
And
all of it.
sometimes there's fear there too.
Yeah, a lot of times.
And there's a little voice in the back of my head that still wants to clarify. I'm like, my son didn't have like a huge alcohol or drug life. I
Yeah.
just am saying that like even any use of any of that is very much outside of what's
The
acceptable
norm.
in
Okay.
Mormonism.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so willingness to even like have that at all be a part of your experience is not the norm. Yeah.
Not the norm.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of. We danced all around, so hopefully, but you did a beautiful job of really giving us the heart of what I think the rebel mask really is which is becoming our authentic voices. And I'm not supposed to be like
Yes.
you and you like me, but being able to feel free to say it and let it and be clear and not hold back that extra 10%. And you model it so well. And I know it's a work in progress, but I'm super grateful for that. And I laugh that at the end of the day, like I feel the people pleaser and the rebel, or whatever mask we are, frankly, it's like we're all just looking for safe, deep, good relationships, and like we forget that all the time. And it's like if we could just hold on to that as our our oak tree, that would be
Exactly.
a great place to be.
Exactly. And that was sort of like a piece of feedback that I gave in group work too, where, I was given some feedback that I can be very resistant, and I sat with that, and I've judged myself for that before, just like the part of me that can receive feedback from somebody else and kind of keep it at arm's length instead of just really welcoming it in. And as I sat with it, I think that's where a big part of the rebel for me is like, I value the resistance that I have because it's not a complete rejection of any feedback that I'm getting. It's just like, that doesn't belong to me yet. I'm going to look at it for a while. I'm going to let it sit by me. And then when I welcome it in, I fully welcome it in. But it usually starts with some resistance, and that's just a part of my process. I think that's a part of being a rebel, is just like Whenever somebody gives you something, you're just like, hang on a second. Let that sit there for a bit first.
I love that. That's like a great math equation of you, is like resistance plus curiosity plus openness equals the best version of you. Like it truly is a great, and to learn to love the resistance, and to learn to be like, this is actually for me. It's not good or bad. And,
Right.
you know, and uncomfortable, you know, I think that it falls to the uncomfortable phase. Is the better we get at being uncomfortable, being ourselves, the better. Because then you just laugh more, and you're just messier, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is just
Yes.
life.
And it
And I'm not
provides
special.
a collective permission for everyone else to be and do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ultimately, that would be a fun world to live in, wouldn't it?
absolutely.
We can hope for that. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, we're making it.
Yeah. One day at a time. Is there anything that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't, about really anything? No limits on what it was.
No,
No.
nope, nothing comes up.
It's always fun to have these conversations, because then the rest of the day I keep thinking about the mask that we talk about, and I keep laughing at all the ways that it shows up, and then, you know, get a couple learnings. So it'll be fun to just marinate in our conversation. But I wanted to just thank you so much for the gift of time and sharing what I consider as a great bright light and an inspiration for me on becoming a more authentic version of myself.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure to take this time and have this conversation. Just really, I feel the same. I'm like, I'm just gonna bask in the afterglow for a while.
Yeah, you should. And now I think there's some type of alarm going on in my house, so we're going to close.
All right, sounds great.
Thank you so much. It's been a
Yes.
pleasure. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Most people don't realize they're wearing a mask, which hides their true power without even knowing it. But the people you work with, your friends, your family, and the world need you to step into the power of your authentic self. Take our free mask assessment to uncover which of the 15 masks you are unconsciously wearing that shapes your life, and how you can start to break free. Start your journey at akeypartners.com and step into the power of your authentic self.